Hey, everyone. Welcome. It is Saturday evening. Thank you for being here and spending some of your time with me. My name is John Tisha. My co-host apparently isn't here, but that's all right. Chris will be here in just a moment. This is Love and Light, and tonight we're talking about back to basics. We're going to dive into it, but I want to bring this to you. So we're going to be touching on some things. As a society, we have distanced ourselves from over the years in the name of progressive progress, celebrating the individual desires and individual maximum freedoms without repercussion or consequence to the detriment of the youth today. We use fundamental to describe things, activities, and principles that are especially important and essential. They affect the basic nature of other things or are the most important element upon which other things depend, which I feel and think and believe, I don't know about you, that we as a society have walked away from, and our youth suffers for it greatly the more that we go into this. And so we're going to be talking about some of the things that we used to talk about, the fundamental basics of life, things to focus on, things to build and grow, to slow down and not go so fast, those type of things, in relationships, in families, in education, in society, the things that we're feeding ourselves on a constant basis. So with that, I'm going to introduce a couple of my panel members. Chris, are you over there? He's not ready yet. This is Chelly. Oh, let me unmute you. Oh, you muted yourself. Chelly with Let's Glow, and also
hello.
us. She's going to be joining us tonight. And then my homie Joshua. He is very smart and very educated and knowledgeable on all things that we're talking about tonight. And I'm excited to hear his thoughts on this. And Mr. Chris. This guy. So I'm going to break down a couple of things. So in the main, what we were talking about earlier, so I said progressive progress. Now here's some breakdowns of some of these words, because I like to play with words. I like to kind of break them down so that we're really clear about what we're talking about. Words are important, despite, we used to be like sticks and stones, right? whatever you say at me, like it's gonna bounce off me because I'm rubber, right? And although as much as that has more to do with the person allowing or receiving things, judgments or expectations or curses from other people affecting you in such a way that it breaks you down or changes your perspective about yourself or the world around you. So it's more in that way, right? Having more control of the things that affect you. But in reality, like, words are powerful. They are very powerful, and we have to really be careful and be wise to choose them properly. So I like to break down words to be very clear about what we're learning and what we're talking about, to really get that idea across. So I like to break things down. So progressive, right? If you go into the dictionary, and there's a couple different dictionaries, but the mobile dictionary on my phone, it actually has a few different meanings, obviously, because there's progressive forward, right? Steps to changing things. But the one that fits our topic tonight, and I don't mean like I'm choosing a definition, for my narrative or whatever, but in its essence, what it means, because a couple things have not, so like words that are spelled the same, but they mean different things, like that. So progressive, making progress toward better conditions, employing or advocating more enlightened or liberal ideas, new or experimental methods. An example of that is a progressive community. The idea behind this is that it's improving the things that are not working, right? We're talking about walking away from a lot of the fundamental things that made us as families, as people, as youth, as communities very strong, which now we're not seeing a lot of that. And it's in my opinion, a lot of it because of the progressive ideas that we have been moving closer and closer to and farther away from the fundamental or traditional ways of life, if you will, to help us stay focused and maintained. What do you guys think about that? Shelly? Unmute yourself.
I was just gonna say, have Joshua go first.
Okay, Joshua, you go first.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I think you're pretty on point with stressing the emphasis on the importance of words and actually applying how words are actually defined to certain situations. Progressive to me, I think, everyone would naturally agree with anything that's progressive. Everybody wants progress, but I think the main problem is nobody really knows what's accurately being chased or what people really want progress from. Because when you consistently just speak of progress, okay, yeah, everybody wants progress, but what do you actually want progress from? You want progress from all the traditional and fundamental values that people are already overlooking disastrously? Is that what you want progress from? So when people consistently just use phrases and words like that, but they really don't understand how important the actual meaning of the word is, it does create a problem. Because in order to have progress, you have to either tear something down or change something. And when things are being promoted in the name of progress, when they really ain't creating progress, you not only set yourself back, but then you tear down certain fundamental values that are actually needed to not only keep society functioning healthy, but also actually get real progress. So that, I think you're pretty much on the money with the importance of words at 100%. 100%.
Shelly, you want to weigh in?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was saying goodnight to my husband, and I have my granddaughter today. So, but yeah, I agree with actually everything you guys said, and I think that this is the perfect time to actually like start digging into these conversations, kind of like rebooting, resetting, how to move forward with it. But really, I can't. I remind me not to go after Joshua anymore.
I know, right? I tried to let you go first.
I know, and I appreciate it, but I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I second that. I co-sign everything he said.
Right. And so, right. So that leads me into liberal ideas. But it also says new or experimental methods. And yes, I understand that to an extent, in order to change things, you have to try new things that may or may not work. But oftentimes I find that even those experimental methods begin to be pushed and forced to be accepted and make it a normal, that it's okay, to the point where it's not working, but we're still doing it instead of retracting from it, getting rid of it, and starting again. Instead, we just keep going and going. You know what? I didn't ask you.
Oh, what I thought?
Yeah.
Just to start it off, like I agree with what was said. I like the Joshua's comment. It kind of, to sum it up, like, what are we progressing to? And for me, like, as I was thinking about, it's like, we have issues. We've had things that have went wrong. We have solutions. We put them in place. And the way I feel about it now is like, even though we've put certain things in place, we're still society is trying to, I don't want to say change all the solutions, maybe change some, advance some other ones, or improving some of the things we've done. And that's where I feel like we're maybe having some issues, because sometimes things we have found the right solution, and I feel like we're trying to advance past that. And I think Joshua hit it on the head with that. With, well, what are we progressing to? Like, what are we really trying to? Where are we trying to end up? In society, like what's our next milestone?
Or what are we trying to progress away from? Or improve that we think is wrong or whatever.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at to start this conversation off.
Okay. Sorry. I'm over here doing multi things. All right. So with that, like I said, going into the liberal ideas. Now, the breakdown of liberal. Now, I don't know if any of you have looked up this word in the dictionary, but it has like a billion definitions of what liberal means. Obviously, you have like a liberal pouring of, or a liberal like in politics, or a liberal in this, or whatever. Like, it has a bunch of different breakdowns, but the ones I wanted to point out, and then it leads to liberalism, but the ones I wanted to point out that stuck out to me the most, especially again with this topic and how things are going right now, and really understanding that, and how it affects us as a community, as families, as a society, but then also with the government, and how like literally seeing how it intertwines and weaves itself together. So I have four of the breakdowns, and it starts with this: of pertaining to, based on, or advocating liberalism, especially the freedom of the individual and governmental guarantees of individual rights and liberties. Now, I understand that, yes, the government is supposed to help and maintain our rights as a society and as a people. However, that to me also, like, if you really think about it and how it pertains to today and right now and what's going on, how intense that is right now, how far that can actually go, the freedom of the individual and governmental guarantees. I don't know about you, but it seems almost parallel to what's going on right now, way beyond just basic constitutional individual rights and liberties, in my opinion. The second one is favorable to or in accord with concepts of maximum individual freedom possible, especially as guaranteed by law and secured by governmental protection of civil liberties. The third one is favoring or permitting freedom of action, especially with respect to matters of personal belief and expression. And the fourth one is open-minded or tolerant, especially free of or not bound by traditional or conventional ideas or values, etc. Think about all of those specific words and how they're put together, and then think about people today, families today, youth today, everything that's been going on legit for the last 12 months, how the government has been running, how all the people have been running, how conversations have been going. Like, really think about that, and then think about we as a people and society and how this affects us. Thoughts, Chelly?
I have to remember to unmute myself. Sorry.
I was going to say that. Unmute.
I think that for me, like within that definition, right when you said that there were so many definitions, I keyed it in, and literally liberal of art, liberal of politics, liberal of this, liberal of that. But out of the definitions you read, I feel like today's society, today's world, would definitely, the last one resonates with me the most. The very last one you read, I'm not going to remember right now the exact words, but I think look around you. I mean, look around us and look what's happening. And I think that they manipulate words to make it fit a certain, to make it, basically, you know how you fluff stuff? You add all this extra fluff to make it look a certain way, but if you actually look at the meaning of it, it just means something totally different. I think, honestly, I don't know. Like,
it's a lot.
It really is, because I think that the way they put the words, right? If you're just reading that and you don't really know what's happening in the world, you're like, oh, cool, right?
Right. You're like, yeah, of course.
Like,
yes,
who wouldn't want that, right? Like, who wouldn't want that? So I think that when you start breaking them down, or when you actually look into what's happening around us, that definitely hits different. So for me, that very last one out of all of the ones you read, I was like, well, there we go. You know what I mean? Like, got it. There we go. But again, we just have to educate ourselves. We have to really start looking into things because words matter. Period.
Joshua.
All right, so
What do you like
I don't
better,
know.
Josh or Joshua? Does it matter?
It doesn't matter, whatever you prefer is fine. But so I don't know if it was the first one or the second one you read off. I think it was might have been the first one. Can you just repeat the first one again for me?
Yes. Of pertaining to, based on, or advocating liberalism, especially the freedom of the individual and governmental guarantees of individual rights and liberties.
Okay, now see that right there, when you mix that in to why people need to stress the importance of actually defining words and what they really mean, those two go hand in hand, and I'll try to break it down as best as I can. Now, when they say governmental guarantees of rights, that's basically what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is everyone is saying that everything is a right now. Like,
right.
Yeah, you have the right to free speech, but I have the right not to be offended. Well, that's a conflict right there. Because if I have the right to freely speak, but then you could say, well, you don't have the right to freely speak because I have the right not to be offended, it's a conflict. That's what's happening with everything that is going on with government. And that is being used to basically trample on things that are actual rights. Like healthcare is not a right. Housing is not a right. You have the right to pursue that, but it's not a guarantee. When the government says that it's a guarantee, now it becomes a responsibility of society. And to me, society is just another word for the state. You know, in Europe, they used to say nothing outside the state, nothing again. It's just another word for the state. So that is why it's important to understand the meanings of words and understanding of what is actually a right. What is a human right? And even if there is laws, like you say, oh yeah, well, the government has laws, liberalism has laws. All right, yes, it does. But there's also unwritten rules and unwritten laws that society has forgotten about. You know, humility, just having common morals, you know, being respectful, treating humans like human beings. Those ain't in the laws. Those are unwritten laws that people overlook as well. But I think that one right there is the major conflict that's going on within society right now, because there's too many things that are getting labeled as rights that really are not rights. They're not rights. They're not a guarantee. And by consistently saying that they are a guarantee or they are a right, it creates conflict and it actually tramples things that are real rights. And that's a major, major, major problem right now. It's a major problem. That's something I would stress on majorly right there, for sure.
Chris?
All right. So throw that back up real quick.
Sorry.
And I agree with you. I think for me, it's the second definition. It was favorable to or in accord with concepts of maximum individual freedom possible, especially guaranteed by law and secured by government protection of civil liberties. To me, it's the maximum individual freedom possible. And I think that's where we are losing ourselves in this nation because, you know, like Josh, and you brought up a good point. The right to freedom of speech and then the right to not offend. To not to be offended. Like you're trying to provide everybody these individual freedoms, and it's not possible. And I was kind of thinking something like before the show started. I was thinking they're trying to make we're trying to progress freedom, right? And they want everybody to be equal and equitable, and you got all these rights, but how are you trying to make America more free, but then also restricting us on many things? So like they want to restrict gun rights in some areas, but you want to advance certain gender policies. So we're progressing in some areas and not in other areas. But what I see happening is outside, you know, with the restricting some freedoms and advancing others. I think that's why we're in this dilemma of where some people feel like when we're progressing, we're trying to move towards socialism and communism and away from democracy and being a republic. because that's what some of these policies look like, because of the restrictions that they put in place. And to me, the maximum, when I think of the maximum individual freedom possible, if we get to the point where, like, we know we're never going to have just a full out free country, it's never going to be like that, because an all out free country is anarchy. I mean, you're kind of just able to do whatever you want. And there's really, the people are the laws. And that's not going to happen. And I think some people think they want that, but they don't. So they're trying to push it to the max. They're trying to push it to the point where we're right at that point of being an having that anarchy, but not. And that's why we're seeing the rioting and stuff, because we've pushed that limit of individual freedom as possible. We were there. And I think if they keep pushing it, there's going to be a tipping point where, because we want to be so liberal, it's like pouring up, I guess, like the concept of you're pouring up a glass, or you're being liberal with the amount that you pour into a glass. Well, at some point, if you're too liberal, the glass is going to overfill. And we don't want that.
Too much of anything is a bad
thing. So
even of good things.
That's kind of where I think I'm at with the liberal, the word being liberal.
And that leads me to liberalism. So there was a couple different definitions, but I wanted to point onto these specifically. So the first one is a movement in modern Protestantism, which is any Western Christian who is not an adherent of a Catholic, Anglican, or Eastern church, separated from the Church of Rome. That emphasizes freedom from tradition and authority, the adjustment of religious beliefs to scientific conceptions, and the development of spiritual capacities. The second one is political or social philosophy advocating the freedom of the individual, parliamentary systems of government, nonviolent modification of political, social, or economic institutions to assure unrestricted development in all spheres of human endeavor, and governmental guarantees of individual rights and civil liberties. On the surface, this is great. And I think that we can all agree that, yeah, of course, we want some civil liberties. Of course, we want the freedom to pursue some of these things without being persecuted or without, interference from someone else just because they think they can, type of things. However, again, when you dive into these things, and you think about the way society is right now, and how our country is right now, and how people are acting right now, and how it's destroying certain things. Now, I'm not saying that all liberal things destroy families or people or lifestyles or whatever. I'm not saying that. But based on the topic that we're talking about right now, think about these words. Emphasizes freedom from tradition and authority. Think about that. The adjustment of religious beliefs to scientific conceptions. How does none of that ring any bells to anyone right now? And again, I think that also goes back to educating oneself, right? Taking that self-accountability, that personal accountability of educating yourself so that you can participate in active, progressive conversation. Productive is a better word, I'm sorry. Active, productive conversations like this. Because if we can't have these, then life just will continue to break down. We'll continue to be at war, a word war, a culture war, a race war, if you will, constantly. What are your thoughts, Joshua?
Yeah, so on that, it's pretty much they all kind of pretty much similar. The problems within it it's pretty much boils down to the people that are running around screaming that they're liberals. They're not actually liberals. They're not practicing actual liberalism, because liberalism, it is needed. I'm not going to bash liberalism and say it's not bad when it's properly practiced, and it's not being properly practiced, because you have liberals now who are using the argument. I'll give you an example. They say conservatives are against progress. They're clutching to their guns and their Bibles. They don't want progress. You'll hear that phrase from them a lot. But that's completely false, because you need a balance of two. You need conservatives to make sure that you don't overstep certain boundaries and trample on certain actual laws or just any human right in general in the name of progress or liberalism. So that's a major problem. People just see the label of liberal, they see the label of a Democrat, and they just let that roll. But these people are not practicing liberalism, and they're not Democrats. When you are constantly expanding the use of government power, that is not a democratic process. It is not a democracy. It is not liberalism. That is not progress. And that's why people really need to start understanding, and really do need to engage in dialogue and understand the importance of words, and that certain things are important, and they're not a laughing matter. Because you could take the word change for another example, right? Everybody wants change, but is all change good? They had change in Nazi Germany. That was bad change. They had change in Soviet Russia. That was bad change. So not all change is good. You know,
Correct.
people just they scream behind that phrase change. They scream behind that phrase liberalism, but they don't really know what it means. And it's not actual liberalism. It's going in a very bad direction. And that's why it's important to really understand those words. I think the reason why conservatism is so important right now to be properly defined is because how I define myself to people when they're like, oh, why are you conservative? I go, because I'm open to ideas. And I basically try to give you an explanation on things that really don't have an explanation. That's just the way they are. There's certain things that you cannot change. There's certain things that should not be changed. I'm open for progress, but not in the name of changing certain things that I know will be disastrous down the line. You know what I mean? That's basically
Right.
how I break it down to people. But yeah, man, that's really important, man, for people to really start to understand the real definitions of words, the real definitions of liberalism, the difference between left and right. We're not enemies. It's two different ideas. Both ideas and both beliefs are needed for actual progress. You can't achieve it with just one. It does not work that way.
And Kim kind of proves that. She said, I was brought up as a Democratic in Boston, and I was told you don't question who's running, you just vote blue.
Mhm.
And that's where we're at right now. You
Yep.
just do what you're told. You learn it when you're young, and then you stick with it, and then you don't come out of that cycle. Chelly.
So can you do me a favor really quick? Can you read that first one back? The one
Yes.
about something with Protestants?
Yes. A movement in modern Protestantism, which is any Western Christian who is not an adherent of a Catholic and Anglican. I don't know if they spelled that wrong.
Angelican.
Yeah, but there's no E in it, so I'm like, Anyways, or Eastern Church, separated from the Church of Rome, that emphasizes freedom from tradition and authority, the adjustment of religious beliefs to scientific conceptions, and the development of spiritual capacities.
So when you read it the first time, I just wanted to make sure it was the first one you said. So I think that that one stuck out to me because I was doing some stuff with Brittany, actually, like probably a week ago. We were having like conversations about stuff. And we were kind of talking about stuff in regards to religion. And she had said to me some research that she had did. Protestants basically were founded by taking a part of the Bible out, and they built off of that. So that definition, like, literally hits with the conversation that we were having in regards to this like progressive way of life that is being normalized for us.
Mhm.
So yeah, for me, I'm thinking like if you look around at the world, and I think what Josh said is like, well, you need a little bit of both to kind of keep us balanced. You need the conservatives to make sure things don't go too far. For me, I just wish that people, I don't mind, I respect everyone's beliefs. I just wish people would read and actually educate themselves before they decide, before they, what am I trying to say? I wish they would just really like educate themselves so that they understand what that means 5-10 years down the road. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's because I think that people, especially a younger generation, they live in the now.
Right.
And we don't think of the long-term effects, just like people are not thinking of the long-term effects of what this stimulus package is going to do going forward, or the ones that, for that matter, because to be honest and fair, I didn't like the last one either. I knew that Trump had no choice but to pass it. He was literally between a rock and a hard place.
Right.
But I didn't like it either, to be honest, because we are going to have to pay that. Our children's children are going to have to pay that back.
That's
I think there was a good point brought up about knowing the meaning of the word. So not to get on a different topic, but just a quick example. So like the word racism. Racism used to mean that one race thought it was superior in all aspects to another. And as time has progressed, and you could say somewhere around the 70s, that word started being used to define racial prejudice and discrimination. Therefore, everything now can be racist. And because people don't understand the meaning of the word, it has put us in kind of and it's another thing that put us in a bad situation. And I think that's the same thing with liberalism. Because they don't understand what the word means, it has, give me a second. It has it has strayed us from either the progress we made, or it's taking us down leading us down the wrong path. And I'll hit on the word, or the second definition was part of it was the freedom of the individual. Is that the one? Yeah. So political or social philosophy advocating the freedom of the individual. And then towards the end of this one, it talks about unrestricted development. No, I'm sorry. Parliamentary systems of government, nonviolent modifications to political, social, and economic institutions. That's the part that stood out, was nonviolent modifications of political, social, and economic institutions. So to what you guys are saying, when people are running around the streets, rioting, talking about liberalism, we want to advance freedom, and then they're burning shit down, destroying stuff, that's not liberalism, because that's not a non-violent modification. No, you're rioting, you're breaking the law. But that has, because the word is not being used properly, people believe, okay, I'm on the left, I'm blue, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, I'm not a conservative. No, you're a criminal at that point when you're burning shit down, because you're not even a liberal. You're using violent methods to try to get your point across. Something else too. I know, Joshua, we do need each other. And I think for people to say like Christians haven't, maybe there are some Christians out there, haven't progressed, I think that's not factual, because I believe many Christians have progressed, and they have practiced liberalism, because maybe you take 60 years ago, a Christian wouldn't have accepted gay people in society or even in their family. Now you can be gay and still be Christian. There's nothing that says that you can't. Now there's some things in the Bible that maybe talk about the acts, and that's of having sex with the same sex. But I think, and from at least the churches that I've visited or been to, many Christians have accepted that hey, yeah, you're gay, but you're still God's people. So that in that sense, there is that liberalism there. So I don't think everybody's like 100% one. I think we do kind of have a little bit of, conservatism in us, or liberalism. But I'll end this one with this is I agree also agree with the fact that we need each other, because with religion, spirituality. There you go.
We're a little tongue-tied tonight,
yeah,
huh,
religion,
guys?
spirituality, and culture, those things set moral and social standards, and they place limitations on those standards. So they'll say, okay, here's our standard. We'll walk up to the line, but we're not crossing it, because we have these standards. And I think because we're trying to be progressive, we keep moving that standard up to the point where I even think sometimes we're crossing over it. And that's why we're in this situation, because We don't all have the same standards as American, and that's our part of our freedom. I think that's also part of the reason why we're in this situation, because we have to come together and say, okay, hey, here's the limit, and this is it. Like we got to meet here in the middle ground and agree that we have to have certain limitations. And this goes back to somebody, and you'll hear me say this a lot. It's things like there's fact and natural law. 1 + 1 is 2. Boys are boys. That, I mean, we have to agree on that. And if we could agree on that, I guarantee we'll start making that. I don't even want to say progress. We'll go back to how things were 5-10 years ago. We were doing good. We kind of strayed from that.
And with that, we are going to bring on Miss Suni. Welcome to the chat.
Sorry, I was texting.
Smokey, hey, I missed you. I felt like I haven't seen you in like, I don't know, a week.
I've been busy, man.
Yeah,
what are we talking about?
She's been running around doing a few things. So today's topic is getting back to basics. So we're talking about, you actually came right into like, we're transitioning now. So the breakdown of some of these words. So I sent you, I don't know if you got it, but I sent you like the opening, basically how we as a society over time have gotten away from the fundamental building blocks that have helped us stay on track, right? So courtship, friendship, sex education, being parents before being friends, personal accountability, and school before sports and relationships. As important as sports are, so is being educated, and sports and whatnot are actually luxuries. They're not a rite of passage. They're luxuries. And if you want to, so anyways, that's part of the topic. And as I had that, I opened with how we've come away from that in the name of progressive progress. And then I broke down the word progressive, which leads to liberal, which then leads to liberalism. And I broke down each word to really get an understanding of what those words mean, and really thinking about how they apply in our society right now and the government right now, and how things are compared to how they were. That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's about where we're at. So the last one, we broke down liberalism.
You saw me?
Okay.
What liberalism really, what it really means. And I'll go over those. So we'll pick up from there and we'll go. So there's two main ones that I pulled from liberalism. The first one is a movement in modern Protestantism, which is any Western Christian who is not an adherent of a Catholic, Anglican, or Eastern church, which is basically they're separated from the Church of Rome, that emphasizes freedom from tradition and authority, the adjustment of religious beliefs to scientific conceptions, and the development of spiritual capacities. That's the first one. And the second one is political or social philosophy advocating the freedom of the individual, parliamentary systems of government, nonviolent modification of political, social, and economic institutions to assure unrestricted development in all spheres of human endeavor, and governmental guarantees of individual rights and civil liberties. So we kind of broke that down to understand what liberalism actually is and how that has affected all of our basic fundamental like building blocks throughout the years, and how we've strayed away from those things.
Sorry. I would agree. I don't think that many people are actually liberal, because when you're liberal, like you said, it means to be free, and they don't embody or represent anything free. It's more like you need to conform to what they believe, and if you don't, then you're like everything under the sun. So it kind of feels like a dictatorship. I'm not gonna lie. It's like a mild case of dictatorship happening.
Right? Like if you're not where we're at, then you're wrong no matter what. And pushing it. And so Chelly at the end of what she was saying brought us to how it affects our kids and into the future, which was actually a really great segue into what that's not what I wanted. Is that what I wanted? Yes, it is. I already read that to you, actually. So brings us to the fundamental ideas or topics or categories that I wanted to hit on. How everything that we just went over, how it affects courtship, how it affects friendship and or community or fellowship between people, how it affects sex education, being parents before being friends, how it affects personal accountability, how it affects school before sports and relationships as a fundamental focus that we used to focus on a lot of, and I don't see a lot of that nowadays or in recent times, and how that benefits our youth today, because it's our youth who are going to suffer the most in the long run. Yes, are we as adults, are we going through this right now? Are we dealing with this right now? Yes, but they are the future. And if they're not prepared for the future, then we are doing them a disservice and we're setting them up for failure and to repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. And our job is to prepare them for to be better than that, to be better than us. So as we move into this, what I wanted to share was, so we have basic fundamentals of like how to be a good person, right? How to be a good person, how to be a good friend, how to do all these things. And me with my faith and my spiritual background, I wanted to touch on Jesus's teachings. And this isn't going to go into like a whole thing. It really is just basically a list of things that we have to be a good person, right? So it's to one, love God. Love your neighbor as yourself, which is something we constantly talk about. You don't have to believe in God to believe that that is true, that that is a good thing to do, to love your neighbor as yourself. Forgive others who have wronged you. Although it's hard and it's difficult, it is still a good thing to do for your personal health. Love your enemies. That sounds even wild and even crazy, but it's more for your peace of mind and your quality of life than it is to hold a grudge over time. Because if you know anything about depression or grudge or anger, how it sinks into you and then eventually manifests into your life. It manifests into your health depleting, and it manifests into your relationships deteriorating, so on and so forth. Ask God for forgiveness of your sins. This is more, again, these are all tied into you as a person, being a better version of yourself for the people around you, for your family, and for the world. As dark as it might be. Jesus is the Messiah and was given the authority to forgive others. Repentance of sin is essential. Don't be hypocritical. Don't judge others. And the kingdom of God is near. It's not the rich and powerful, but the weak and poor who will inherit this kingdom. And that doesn't mean like the weak as in you're not strong and you can't do anything, or poor as in you have nothing. But those who need him the most, those who need freedom, spiritual freedom the most, or healing the most, that's what we're talking about. And that's all of us, because we sin every day and it weighs on us every day. We deal with anxieties and worries and concerns and turmoil every single day. We are all those people who will inherit the kingdom as long as we're striving to know who he is and build that relationship. Now, for me, in a spiritual sense, it's important for me to share this with you on that level, whether you guys believe that or not. It's just a segue into, again, the fundamentals that we have strayed away from slowly and how that affects our children today, because we're not teaching them these things. We're not teaching them how to do these. And a lot of the time, because we're not doing them ourselves, because we are the examples at the end of the day. No,
I feel like you just went like, and then Shelly goes, Lord Jesus, there's a fire.
So that puts us into, so he's in the military, and he was in the military, whatever. One of the things that he learned was the 4 pillars of resiliency, which I think is super important. And the 4 pillars are social, spiritual, physical, and personal. This goes into focus, strength, success, wisdom, and responsibility. Again, all fundamentals that affect all of the topics that I talked about before, and we're going to start getting into that. But I wanted to preface with that to prepare you for the conversation we're about to have. Now let's start with being parents before being friends.
Real quick, with the personal, that's the mental state. Just want to clarify that. So that's taking care of your mental health as well with everything else. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah. That's
okay. So being friends or being parents before being friends, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important to you is that? And we'll start with Chelly. Take your mic off or take your mute off.
10.
Joshua.
10.
Suni.
What was the question again?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you to be a parent to your children before you are their friend?
Oh, a 10.
So I would, and I agree, a 10. Now, there's 5 of us here, all different backgrounds, all different lifestyle. Well, yeah, we probably all don't do the same things. Different perspectives on a lot of different things, even though we agree on some. All agree that being a parent to our child is more important than being their friends. And yes, in the comments, go ahead. On a scale of 1 to 10, you could put your reasons in there as well if you'd like. So we can agree that being a parent to our children is more important than being their friends. Why? Why is it more important to you, Chelly?
Because I have to build a foundation for my children to grow up to be thriving young adults. Like, I have to instill in them standards and morals and what it is to be a good person, what it is to work hard for the things that they want in life, because no one gives anybody anything for free. So I'm, as their parent, I'm their foundation, and no house will last the test of time if there's cracks in the foundation.
Right.
That's my main reason.
Joshua?
I think being a parent before being a friend, I mean, I would hope that would be pretty much common sense to the majority of the American public, but I'm starting to question that. But I think it's really important because a lot of parents, you know, with the way society is, they don't want to hurt their kids' feelings. But you need to hurt your kids' feelings. That's part of being a parent, because when you hurt their feelings, that's how they learn their lessons. I mean, oftentimes parents discipline their children. They might hurt their feelings in the short term, but it's to benefit them in the long term. You know what I mean? And if you don't do that, then you basically get the society that you're kind of seeing now. You know, people idolize the victim and the person that is consistently failing before they actually idolize somebody who's putting in the work. People are condoning just malicious behavior. People are allowing people to burn, loot. They're okay with that because people are idolizing victims, and that comes from parenting. You know what I mean? And you don't have to put people down who try and fail at something. You don't got to put them down, and you don't have to do it to your children neither. But you got to understand the importance of correcting certain failures. You got to point out why they ended up failing at something. You can't just overlook it. So I think that's also another major problem with parenting. I think there's a lot of.
Oh. Can't hear you, Josh.
Oh, what did I break?
Oh, no. All right, Suni. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Somebody was calling me. Yeah, what I was saying was
We're calling him again.
Yeah. Somebody keeps trying to call my phone. But yeah, that's basically, I think it's important. I also think there's other things too, though. It's kind of not parents' fault, but it is parents' fault in a way, and that has to do with a lot of the technology that's out as well. You know, a lot of parents are overwhelmed with the way things are right now, whether it be work, whether it be you just got a chaotic life, all the things going on around you. It's understandable. But I often see kids on the phone constantly. I see kids as young as 9, 10 years old with a phone. I see them on the big phone. There's nothing wrong with it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying not to get your kids anything nice. I'm not saying that. But I see kids getting consumed and basically being raised by these phones. They're being raised by what they see. And that's why you see people that are more reactionary to an image or something that gets posted before actual facts. People are
Before reading the caption?
Yeah. People are just it's reactionary. So I think it's a major thing. I think parents need to start taking some accountability on some of the problems that we see right now stem from that. From actually, not doing what parents are supposed to do. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect parent either. I have my faults just like everybody else, but I try to work at it, to the best of my ability to make sure I'm doing what I know is needed to be done, so my children don't fall into that rut of that group think, thinking like the group and feeling pressured to just agree with the group and things like that. You know what I mean? So I think it's very important.
Suni?
I think it's important because I relate to it on like a social media aspect. Like social media was big for me growing up. It's just a part of who we were. You had a social media, you had friends, that was it. So I look at it like this: you are your child's first influencer. You set the tone for everything. Your friends want to make you feel good, they want to hang out with you, but your parents, they're going to prepare you for the world so that you don't conform to the world. Like that's what I think a parent's job is. And a lot of parents are asleep at the wheel because YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all these things consume your child while you're working. And I know, some parents got to work. I get that. You can't have eyes on your kids 24/7, but check in on them.
Right.
Yo, what you doing, bro?
Right.
I watch it on my son all the time. What you watching? Oh, yeah. For real? Tell me what it's about. If I don't like it,
to do it,
guess what? Turn it off. It's that simple.
Yes.
If you're upset, you'll get over it and we can have a conversation about it. But I tell them all the time, my kids are 9, 7, and 5. I'm not your friend. I'm your mom. Because that basic level of respect is what's going to stop them from they're going to make mistakes, but they'll think twice because they don't want to disappoint their parents. I'd rather them fear me there rather than anything else. So I think just be your child's first influencer.
I agree with that for sure.
Oh, you just got hit with a...
Oh.
My husband's playing PUBG. I'm sorry.
That's Ricky, right?
Usually it's my son. Yes.
Oh,
that's Ricky. Yeah. Hey, Ricky.
That's not my son or my husband. He's upstairs sleeping. It was Suni's husband this time.
It's Kyle.
That's why I said for the first time it wasn't me.
He's like, pan. Oh my God. Yeah. They're playing PUBG. This is what I got to deal with.
Nice. Chris?
All right. So I like what Charlie originally said, and that was we're here to build the foundation for their lives. And when they're little, we do build a foundation. And as they get older, we help them maintain that foundation for what they're going to live on until we're not here no more. And Joshua and soon you guys both brought up some good points as far as being the first influencer in their life, and how some people they're worried about how they feel now versus the long-term effect, the short-term versus the long-term. And I think that is something we're missing and I think that's part of the reason why we're in this oversensitive nation right now. Like everything, there's certain things that are just people are oversensitized about, and then there's certain things that they're desensitized to. But feelings is a big one, and emotions, because everybody, nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. Don't hurt your kids' feelings, because if you do, you're the worst parent. And because I think too many people listen to that, that's where they don't want to hurt their kids' feelings. That's where they put themselves in the friend category. This ain't a relationship. This ain't like you're going out on a date where you're trying to be friends with somebody, get to know them. No, these are your kids. And we should care, we shouldn't go overboard, but it's not the right now feelings. It is those, how are they going to feel about it later? And for me, I'll tell my kids, and this is kind of military thing that I learned, like being in the army. Like they'll straight up tell you, go fix yourself. And if you don't fix yourself, when you come back, I'm gonna help you fix yourself. Like I'm gonna make sure you get there. And when you start learning stuff like that, like I was already with that, like that with my kids, but I tell my kids that, like, go fit, you better go take care of that. You better go clean this up. You better go fix this. Like fix yourself, because if I got to do it, it's not going to, you're going to lose stuff. You're going to lose phones. It's not going to be nice.
Fun.
And I've gotten to the point where like I've upset my kids so much and they'll give me that face and they're like,
yeah,
like, that's fine. Because I much rather you hate me. Like you can hate me right now. I much rather you hate me and think you hate me, because in the long run, as long as you're successful and you add to this society, you can continue to hate me the rest of your life. But if you don't go to jail, you're not living off the system, and you're being successful or you're progressing in life, I'm good. Like, so if you feel like you hate me, by all means, hate me. But I'm going to make sure that you're fed, you got a roof, and I teach you the right thing, or what I think is the right thing.
The hard things.
The hard things. Yeah. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And I think because people aren't willing to be real with themselves, like, hey, you might hurt their feelings. They might hate you for a couple of days. They stray away from that. But hey, I'll tell you what, I'm okay, because I've pissed my son off, my oldest. I've made him really mad where he's upset with me for a couple hours. But you know what? He gets over it, and then we sit down and we have a conversation, and we're good, because he knows my intentions are just trying to look out for what's best for him and to progress him forward. It's tough love.
All right, Sunia's got to get going here, but she's got a little something she wants to share.
I'm just saying, like, look, if your kid draws an ugly picture, like, tell them it's ugly. If your kid is walking around singing, bro, and they can't sing, tell them that's not your lane. Like, tell them it's okay. It's okay. Look, we would not have American Idol if more parents told your kid, like, dog, that's not it. If they draw an ugly picture, tell them. You'll prepare them for the world. So when they grow up and they think they're the best artist ever and it's garbage, when that person tells you, yo, you're not an artist, they're not destroyed. Because that's what happens to people.
Yeah.
Your mom told you can go be a rapper. And it's like, no, you can't. No.
Well, that's kind of like our oldest was swimming for a while, and really he was just doing it just to do it. But he would try to win, but only during the meets. He wouldn't really try to excel during practice or listen to us when we're like, hey, there's some YouTubes that you different strokes you can try, or try this, or, you got to do some land exercises too. So that your body is strong enough to be in the water. And he was like, the whole time I'm like, yo, I don't want to hear nothing about you not winning or not this or not that. If you're not willing to work for it, if you're not willing to do the work, then I don't want to hear no complaining. I want to hear it. That's it. Like that.
Be like, bro, you suck. That was a terrible meet you had. What the hell happened?
Well, I'll ask him questions like, and why did that happen?
I'm gonna say one more thing. If I had a bad game, I got a lecture about my bad game. Wasn't no coming home, feeling bad for myself. No, you sucked. And we're gonna talk about why you sucked. Like long lectures. Maybe we need to bring that back. I don't know.
What did you do?
For what?
What were the three things? Remember? The three things you did good, the three things that you did that you didn't and you need to work on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I was like, hold on,
right.
what are you talking about? So we got to go through this thing. It's like it's the after action review. So it's like 3 things you did good, and 3 things you can improve on, and 3 sustainment. So like 3 things you need to keep the same, because there's sometimes you don't want that change. So and that's like a minimum. So like I sat down with the oldest one day and I was like, all right. So I don't restrict him to 3. Like, give me, what did you do wrong? And he was like, well, boom, 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 boom. Like he knew what he did wrong. Okay, what do you think that you need to keep doing? Like, what do you need to sustain? Like that you don't need to make any better? Like, what's really working for you? Well, this is working for me. Okay, now what do you got to improve on? And I've had those conversations with them. Like that works too. And I kind of agree with Suni. Like, hey, but sometimes you just got to be real. Hey, like if they're really trying to be the best artist in the world, you know, let's say like comic book drawing, but they're just not that good at it. At some point, you're gonna have to be like, "Hey, I know you're trying." Like, and this isn't just like out of nowhere, but if they ask you for advice, or like, "Hey, how do you think this is?" I think it could be better. Like if you're going there, like you really got to work on this, because I have to agree with her. I think that's why some kids get up on stage and they think they're the best singers because their mom let them go their whole life, or dad let them go their whole life, thinking, man, they can hit those notes. And then the first person in their life tells them, you just ain't cutting it, and it destroys them. Not saying you got to be mean, but you got to be honest with them at some point. I like that.
Well, you know, my daughter, she goes, Mom, do you think I could sing? Like, do you think I could be a singer? I'm like, well, I think you can do whatever you want if you work hard for it. If you do the practice, if you do the vocal lessons, if you really work your singing abilities and talent and skill, then yeah, of course you can. But not unless you do the work in order to become good at what you want to do.
I'm gonna have to disagree. Hey, some people just can't sing.
Well, no, I understand that, but okay, look, it's like this. If she can hold a tune, and you can hear that she can hold a tune, that means that she can improve.
Yes.
You, on the other hand,
I was jamming out before you guys got in, but I had it on mute.
Can I just add something to this topic since we're talking
Yeah,
about
I definitely want to add something too.
yes, of course.
I want to
So,
circle back to after Josh.
So I agree with what Suni said, but I want to add something to what Suni said too. So parents, it is your job to correct your children. Yes, it is your job to critique your children. It is your job to point out it's okay to set goals, but it's also
Yes.
important to point out unrealistic goals. That's important. But another thing that's a problem with parents, and a lot of parents are at fault for this, is they try to define what success is to their children as well. You often hear parents always talk about, you got to go to college, you got to go to a university, right? That's success.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major problem that happened with a lot of parents. And I think it's another major problem with conservatives overall, because we've gotten to this point in society where it's not who we are, it's what we are.
Mm-hmm.
What we do for a living defines us, not who we are. That doesn't define us anymore. You know, everybody's stuck in this rut of work and consumption. You work all week long. Even when you often meet people, right? It's not, nice to meet you. It's like, what do you do? Right?
Right.
It defines people. So I think parents are making a mistake with that too. Is like constantly putting that pressure and telling their children on what you should do to be successful. And I think it's wrong, because a lot of children grow up and go to universities, and a lot of kids go to college, and it's garbage. They're learning nothing but garbage. My first job was at a restaurant, and I was a dishwasher, and I was working with waitresses that were done with college and couldn't get a job. They were waitressing, and there's not wrong with waitresses, but that's just an example. You know, so I think parents need to stop falling away from that. You know, college is good. I'm not saying college is bad. It does have some good things with it, but just as important as it is to critique your children and tell them that they can set goals, but it's also important to point out unrealistic goals. It's also just as important to know the boundaries on telling them what defines success as well, and what you should sacrifice for success. You shouldn't sacrifice who you are for success. You shouldn't let your job define you and define your character, and you shouldn't let money consume you as well. Money is important, but those things should not define you as a person. So I think both of those are important.
Correct. Go ahead, Shelly.
So yeah, I just wanted to say, I agree that you have to tell your children what their strong suits are, so to speak. But I'm not for the telling your kids, hey, that picture sucks. That ain't me. I'm not that parent. It's just not me. I think that when talking to anybody, there's a right way and a wrong way to say things. And we need to be very aware of age appropriateness. Yes, I don't believe in raising like little crybaby whining kids either. Like my kids were never ever the kind of kids that went to the grocery store and cried for stuff. They never did it. Like I never had them issues in a grocery store ever. My kids knew if I stared at them a certain way, they're about to get that ass handed to them, period. Like don't act out. I just think again, when building a foundation with your kids or when your kids are in the process of growing, for them to be successful, and I am guilty, I'll say it, I am guilty of focusing on college readiness. Now, mind you, I am almost 50 and I've come from the ghetto. And in my neighborhood, you were always told you can't do this, you can't do that. So I was going to make sure my kids did everything people said they couldn't do. I think that with so 3 of my daughters went to college, and then now my son is about to go to college. But I think with him, it's the first time I've ever considered having him go to a junior college to get his get all the little things out of the way, or the military. I think before like just digging into educating myself on a lot of things going on, it was like my kids literally had no choice. I promise you, they had no choice. Like they were programmed from the time they were little. Like schoolwork is your only job. That's the only thing that I need you to be great at. Everything else you want to do, I'll support it as long as this is first. So I was one of those parents. I was guilty of that. Thank God it worked out really well for me. My kids are great kids because in the same regards with college, even though I think college, they are pushing so much crazy stuff. Like 2 of my daughters went away to school, and at some point when they came back, it was like I didn't know who they were. And now, mind you, at that time, I was a Democrat my whole life. So even it was just a little too much for me. You know what I mean? Like it was just, who are these kids? Who were they raised by? Kind of thing. But I will say that when you have an open relationship, and by open, I mean a relationship where you can communicate with your kids, where your kids can trust you to tell you anything because you're not going to judge them. You're not going to look at them funny, or yes, they know you're going to have a conversation with them and you're going to tell them the truth. I keep it 100 with my kids since they were babies. So I think that, and for my kids, they wound up like a lot of the things that were instilled in them, that shined out, that shined through over anything else. So for me, like I said, I'm kind of guilty of all those things. I was one of those parents who it's college or nothing. Like, and it was literally, you go to college, you go to the military, or you get a job and you move out.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's the way it was focused. But like I said, I also for little kids and stuff, when my kids were little, they didn't really, my older kids, they didn't really play with like electronics and stuff all that much. Like it was limited, very limited. But as times change and things change, my younger 2 got it a lot easier. But and I think my parenting has changed a little bit. Like I'm not quick to
a lot of it per Ariel.
Per Ariel, yeah. Yeah, per my daughter Ariel. But my middle child here, my middle child be like, she needs to stop. But no, it has changed. I'll say it 100%. It has changed. I've learned as a parent because I realized that I was not a perfect parent, but I always knew that. And even to this day, I'm not a perfect parent. I learn every day from them. They learn from me. And I think that for me, having people say that your kid shouldn't fear you. You know what I mean? Like that, oh, that's unhealthy. All this new like liberal ideology. And I was like, you know what? No, I want my kid to know, like, hey, I don't have loose hands with you. But if you ever think that you are going to act a fool,
Right.
like I will take it to you. Like respect is first and foremost. And we I've been fortunate that things worked out for me. Like I said, I've made many mistakes, many, many, many mistakes. And I'm learning every day.
I just want to clarify something real quick. So I agree with you on the age appropriateness. Like my 6-year-old, well, he's 8 now, the youngest
He
one.
said 6.
But when he was 6, like he drew a picture, it's a stick figure. Like, okay, he sits. But if he's 14 drawing stick figures, talking about, Dad, look, this is amazing. I'm like, it's a stick figure, kid. It's okay. Like age appropriateness. Like I agree. What were you going to say?
I was going to say there's a difference between fear, as in scared fear, and respect fear, or a healthy fear. Yes, exactly. There's a healthy fear of, so like the fear that we have for God, right? It's in reverence to, it's in awe of. So we don't want to let him down. We don't want to, we make mistakes and feel bad about it. Like we don't want to sit there in that, and we don't want to disappoint, right? It's the same thing with the kids. They don't want to disappoint us, to have a look at them in such a way. I remember it horrible situation, stupid situation, but I was in high school and I got caught shoplifting, but I had the money in my pocket. Like I legit went to the store. It was at the mall too. I went to the mall to get clothes for work, and I had money in my purse, and my old habits kicked me in my ass. It was so bad. It was so bad. I walked in with one, came out, or walked in with two, came out with one. Like it was legit. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And so my biggest disappointment in that was being in at the police station in a little room or whatever, and having to sit across from my mom and see the look on her face when she looked at me. Never did it again. Never did it again after that.
I agree with you on that part. Like my son, he's had some things where he would, like, if something, let's just say something didn't go great, and then we had to like talk to him about it or something, like he would literally like write us a letter, and my son stands at like 6'3", and my
Right.
son would literally like, he would be, and he's not super emotional, but he would be like more like, oh my God, like I disappointed you guys.
Yeah.
Like, that was my son, of all my kids, my son's biggest fear was disappointing us as parents.
Yeah. You had something to add?
No, it was just a healthy fear. That's all I was pointing out.
Yes. So,
all right, so
there is a difference.
Even though liberals will say there is not, that there's no such thing, and I'm like, well,
right, and that's like one of those things that goes back to fundamental values, is that it is a healthy fear to you. How do you set that boundary? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, between parents and children. If you constantly are not acting like their parent, there's that healthy respect, that healthy boundary isn't there. And so there has to be a healthy amount of fear, a healthy amount of respect, a healthy amount of, what you say is important and it does matter. There needs to be a healthy amount of that in order for parents to be parents to their kids, and they can't be afraid to access that. And so that's what I mean by distancing ourselves from fundamental values of letting our kids run all over us, letting our kids be the point of focus of our life until we run ragged, to where we can't be an effective parent. And to those, and there are some who that is what they do. No, I'm not taking anything away from you whatsoever. This has everything to do with relationship with your child, period. And so that's going to move us into how we feel being parents before friends, and how that affects our kids in their school, in their friendships, in their courtships, and the responsibility of that, and how we've come away from that over time to what it looks like now. So school before sports and relationships, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that to you? Chelly?
school before sports,
Yes.
10.
So education.
10.
Education before sports and relationships.
10. Wait,
Josh.
wait. You said, I'm sorry, hold on, wait. I want to make sure that I'm clear. You said school before sports. But then you said and relationships. Like what do you mean in regards to relationships?
I don't mean friendships. I mean relationships. In junior high and high school.
School before sports
so education,
and relationships?
Yes, education. Okay. Education as a primary focus before sports and before relationships.
Like boyfriend, girlfriend.
Boyfriend, girlfriend. Like
their
friendships.
They're boyfriend, girlfriends.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, it's always going to be school first. I just wanted to make sure. Wait, I was like, wait, what am I answering? No, it's going to be hands down education for me.
Joshua?
This one's a little tough for me, only because when it comes to education, I kind of, it falls into a category of like, really, what do you define as education? Because I think early learning for children, I would want to say maybe to 6th grade, or let's just go hypothetically 8th grade, they kind of get the gist of it, where they can kind of start educating themselves on certain things, because a lot of people educate themselves on many things. So I think it's a 10, but I would also put sports in there, but not just sports, but like physical activity also being very important as well. So I'm kind of like stuck in a wedge on that one per se, because I think
why I asked it.
Yeah, I think sports, I think physical activity is another major problem right now with a lot of children. And I'm not bashing people. Like, listen, some people have health problems. I get it. But Pete, you got to take care of yourself. And if you want to be healthy, mind and body go hand in hand. If you don't feel good about yourself, dude, you're not gonna have a healthy mind. It needs a balance. You don't gotta be a model or nothing like that, dude, but at least try to take care of yourself. Go for a walk, get some air, get some type of physical activity. You know, we're humans, man. We need that, dude. I see so many kids, dude, don't play sports. They're in the house all day. That's not healthy, man. It can't be. It's not. So I'm kind of on a wedge on that one. But I would say education, I'd give them both the same rating with sports and education, like a balance.
I think I kind of agree with you on that. I want to say I will agree with you on that. Not kinda. I think physical activity and education comes before, in high school or at any age before they're an adult. It comes before the relationship. So before their boyfriend or girlfriend, or whatever friend they have. Because that shouldn't, if it's the other way around, and the person they're dating or in this relationship with, if they're the priority, I think that's setting the kids off onto a bad track, because that means every person that comes after that person, if there's anybody else, will always be the priority in their life, and they'll never progress themselves. But I do think education and physical activity are important, and I agree with you, because not all kids they don't all learn the same, and not everybody's the type of person to go into class and pick up a book and read. There's different we all learn differently, is what I'm getting to, and not everybody is meant to go to college. I firmly believe that there's just some people that don't have the mental capacity or desire, but I'm not outside desire. Like, just some people just don't have that in them to go to college and to gain excessive amounts of knowledge, and to actually have, like, that goes back to kind of like we were talking about yesterday. Like, they might get the knowledge or might be presented to them, but they don't have the wisdom to use it. And some people have a hard time gaining it. Like, some people just have a hard time with school. But if you put them in front of something, whether it be sports or hand tools or automotives or whatever it may be, like, they might excel in that.
You mean type of education?
Yes, type of education or physical activity, because some of it's, like a sport. Some people, different things might be able to help them excel in life. I do think that you should have a little of both. I do. There is that's that part of resiliency. I think you need the balance. I don't think you could be it can't be all about sports, because if it's all about sports and you don't have any type of knowledge, numbers, math, or whatever, you're going to get played. So you got to know a little bit. You got to know what $1 million is, and if somebody's taking 10% versus wants 30% of your check. This way you don't get screwed. But outside of that, I mean, it depends on the kid.
Right. And so I bring this up because, again, everyone kind of has a slightly different perspective on education, sports, relationships. And we see a lot of this because we see a lot of young parents that are.
I'm sorry, I have to bow out.
Okay.
I'm
Right
gonna
here?
yes, I'm gonna bow out
Oh,
early.
sorry.
I got a friend over. He's coming to visit. I appreciate it. Charlie, I know I'll see you. Joshua, it was nice seeing you again. Hey, dude, I really like when you come back because I make my little notes and put them in my little folder. Dude, I like having these conversations because I feel like I learned something, and like I know I got something from Charlie today, Spoonie. I like the different perspective you bring, so it was nice seeing you again. You guys have a good rest of your night and good rest of the weekend, and we'll do this again sometimes. And everybody in the comments, I'm remembering some people, but Jonathan, Ricardo, I think it was like Kathy, Joanne. There's some people out there, Barbara. Hey, I appreciate you guys showing up. Keep showing up. Keep sharing and liking the videos. We appreciate it, and we're just trying to continue to have these conversations. And have a good night.
Chris, wait, I want to touch on something you said before you run out. So you were saying, and I was going to say it before you started, but you kind of brought it up when you said that, like, there's a lot of kids that, well, not a lot, but you said there are kids who just are not great at stuff, right? And I think that comes to us being parents, knowing what our kids' skill levels are, right? But I also want to say on the opposite, I'm going to be Brittany today. On the opposite side, there are some kids.
Brittany,
I'm going to be Brittany tonight. There are, so on the opposite end of that spectrum, there are kids that are not great at sports and do not enjoy it in any way, shape, or form. So I think that that's also a thing. Like my son is an amazing basketball player. Like he could shoot threes all day, every day. He's an amazing basketball player, an amazing baseball player. He doesn't like doing it on a team.
Mm-hmm.
It drives him nuts. And not to mention, so I just kind of wanted to throw that part in because there's like two sides of that. And I think that we need to just know their strengths. We need to know their weaknesses, and kind of like focus on that. And like now my son is older, so he goes downstairs and he works out with his father. So he's starting to get the like, you know, the exercise and stuff in. But prior to that, like we've put him in baseball since the time he was 4. And I think he just grew to hate it.
Yeah.
I really do think you gotta have a balance. Like one of ours, he doesn't.
Davian,
he's not a sports
he's not
person.
a real active kid, but he likes baseball because it's the lazy sport.
Like that's his thing. Like he likes running to first base. Like he'll run the bases, but he's cool. So I agree with you. At the same time, like it just comes down to balance. I think you need a little bit of everything. I do one more thing before I left because I was going to say this, Josh. You said something about being a model. Like, you know, you don't have to work out. Not everybody has to be a model. I'm telling you, dude, that's hard and it's also unhealthy. So I agree with you. We shouldn't be at that level. You type it. No, balance. What? Balance is key. And everything. Have a good night. And I will see you guys next time.
Good night, Chris.
So the reason I brought it up is because I over the years, and I think that the number has increased over the years, is young mothers, young fathers, starting as early as 8th grade, which is about 14, 15, all the way into high school. Some don't graduate, some do. Some are very, very, very determined about it, and some go into a trade school after, or they get their GED, and then some just don't. And their children end up being the ones who hold the legacy of the family, who are the first to graduate, or who are the first of this. I mean, that's a lot of pressure, in my opinion. It's a lot of pressure to put on them because we weren't taught when we were younger the fundamentals of life, the things that will keep us out of trouble, educating our kids so that they know what is right and what is wrong, or knowing the consequences of the choices they make over time. And that's why I brought it up. I do understand, and I do know that there are some kids who are just not sports savvy. I just ask because more often than not, it's the parents who push the kids into these certain things. But without that education, and I say this in relation to school specifically, in your junior highs and in your because typically in junior highs or elementary, it's like they don't really start having school sports until they're maybe fourth grade. And that's like the latter half of elementary going into junior high and then into high school. And I see, you know, which I get and I understand, well, my kids, they get good grades, especially in high school, they get good grades and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's okay if they have a boyfriend or girlfriend, or it's okay if they do this or that. But even straight A students can get pregnant and have kids early. Even straight, okay, hands go raised. Even straight A students who are in leadership, who are in, student politics or whatever they're called, even they are not, what do you call it? Immune to peer pressure. They're not immune to drug pressure. They're not immune to sexual pressure. Like, they're not immune to all of these things. And so I find it in my perspective and the way I see this, I find it a little naive to think and believe that they deserve or they have a right to an extreme amount of privacy away from our view and knowledge of what they're doing just because they have good grades or they seem like good kids, even though their attitude's off the roof, especially when they're away from you, or they're doing all these things that you don't know about, without having that relationship with them. And so that's why I asked that. It's because, again, nowadays it's more like, yeah, go ahead, go do that. Because a lot of parents, again, I said this lots of times, not tonight, but in general, parenting is exhausting. Parenting is hard. Having good and positive relationships is not always easy because it takes work, and a lot of people are not willing to put that work in. And that's something, again, that is an old fundamental value that we no longer talk about. We no longer educate other parents, other friends. We don't educate our kids on how to have good, positive relationships. We're friends today. We're not friends. We're friends today, but we're not. Oh, we're not friends anymore because we're in a fight. Or, oh, we're friends again. Like my daughter did this when she was younger. Ugh, she's younger. She was only in 5th grade right now. She's only 11. And a year or two ago, she came home talking about, we're friends today. We're not friends. Like, going through the stress of friendship. I'm like, yo, no, no. You're either going to be friends or you're not. You're either going to be friends through the hard times and through the times that you don't understand, and you're going to work it out, and you're going to ask questions, and you're going to figure it out, and you're going to put that time and effort into that friendship, or you're not. But what we're not going to do is go back and forth in between. We're good today, we're not good tomorrow. Also, that's not a friendship. That's not a friendship, because that's not how you build relationships. And so parents shying away from those important and difficult talks with our kids is missing. It's a fundamental thing that is missing from a lot of parents today. And there could be a number of reasons. We're not going to get into that. But I'm just talking specifically focused. Focus. That's not the right, like, I have a thought in my brain. It's not coming out right.
I think that like, as far as like boyfriends and girlfriends, my daughters, well, my older daughters, because they're the ones that are the oldest, well, 3 of them anyway, they were allowed to start dating, and I say dating
It's just like lightly.
I say dating. Like, yeah, we know that they're going to use that little boyfriend girlfriend term, but I'm like, first of all, we're keeping you pretty busy. I know where you're at, who you're with, because I'm not one of those parents like, yeah, go ahead, take the bus with your friends, or somebody else's mom is come picking you up. No, I'm dropping you off. I'm talking to a parent so they can see this face in case I got to come for them. Like, I need to know where my child's at, who they're with at all times. I drop them off, I pick them up. So for me, like, I've not really had an issue with the whole boyfriend girlfriend type thing. You know what I mean? Like, I think my kids kind of just, again, when you're instilling that foundation from the time they're young, and you're having all these talks as they come up, because, like, you know, like, your daughter will come home and tell you little stuff she hears. They're gonna hear stuff even if you're not talking to them about
Right.
it. They're gonna hear stuff in school. So when they have those questions, you have to answer it. And again, I would advise people to use age appropriate language in that process. But I think for me, like, I've never really had to deal with that, you know, like, boyfriend, girlfriend. My son is 17 and he's like, I'm good. He's like, I'm selfish. I don't
Yeah.
got time for it. He's like, girls are needy these days. And I just don't. And I was like, but you know what? I'm glad he knows that about himself. Like, I'm super glad he knows that. Like, he's like, I just, you know, the people that, and my son is like super picky too. He don't like girls that smoke. He don't like girls that vape. He don't like girls that wear revealing skin too much. He's just not about it. He's like, yeah, no. He's like, the girls that, I'm good. So I was like, all right. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to add that little part about, like, the whole dating thing. Oh, I did want to talk about the whole friend thing. So I have 4 girls, 3 are adults now. And I just want to say that, you know what I've learned through all of those girls and all the headaches with we're friends today, we're not friends today, we're friends. You know what I learned with my last one that's 15? I don't get involved at all. They figure it out. Trust me, they figure it out.
Well, that's what I tell her. I'm like, you guys need to work that out.
I
You gotta
don't
work it out because this is nonsense.
My daughter will come home and she'll tell me all this stuff, right? I'm like, okay. Like, because I keep the communication open. So I'll be like, okay, well, maybe, you know, because my daughter too, my youngest one, she's like she's super stubborn too. So sometimes I have to tell her in a nice way that she's the problem. Because she is. Like, my daughter is like, hey, I'm going to tell you like it is, period. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no leaning with her. She's like, well, hey, if you're acting like that, then you're acting like that. I don't care. My daughter's like, I don't got time to coddle you. You're not a baby. So yeah, I've learned to stay very, very far away from those.
Josh, your thoughts?
So on friends, especially relationships with kids in school, I think a lot of it comes down to, and a lot of people, they kind of miss this aspect of it. It's freedom to do things comes with responsibility. Freedom is responsibility. You can have the freedom to, you know, maybe talk to a boy or vice versa. That's fine, but it needs to have some responsibility to it.
Right.
You know what I mean? People want to be free to do whatever they choose, and the same applies to kids. They want the freedom to do this and try this, but those things that you choose to do with that freedom does have responsibilities that come back. So, and I think a lot of that, again, falls into the parenting part and certain fundamentals that are just not taught, or they're not taught at the level that they should be. And it's
Right.
just overlooked. You know, everybody has the freedom to make a mistake, but nobody has to have any accountability for these mistakes.
Right.
Because your mistake isn't, the mistake you make isn't your fault. It's somebody else's fault. Well, I wouldn't have did this if this wasn't like this, or I wouldn't have, you know, well, there was people drinking there and I made a bad decision. No accountability. And that's the thing that comes with those fundamentals, and it's not there anymore, and it's not good. It's not healthy. A society can't function with a whole generation of people that are just, they feel like they have the right to just make whatever mistakes they want and say whatever slanderous remarks they want, and promote these absurd policies all they want, and even vote with no responsibility. People don't even know what they're voting for. They have no idea, none of that. There's no
They just know what they're voting against.
Yes, exactly. People are defined by what. It's not who you're voting for, it's what you're voting for.
Right.
They're not voting for Joe Biden, they're voting for a Democrat. They're not voting for the left, they're voting against the right. All of that stems from that responsibility, that life, the freedom of life in general comes with responsibility. The freedom to parent however you want, that's your choice to parent however you want. But it comes with some responsibilities. When things don't go right and your child's becoming a handful, that you need to take accountability for that. You know what I
Right.
mean? Those are all things that it's huge, and it's missing, and people are just misinterpreting the words and what they actually mean. It's just not good. It's not going to go, nothing's going to change unless people take some accountability for that. And even people like us, like we're doing the right thing, and it needs to continue, because people feel no responsibility to how things are in society. People have this false notion that things are just going to work their way out on their
Mhm.
own. It won't get that bad. No, it's going to really, you can guarantee that. So you're not going to take any responsibility. You know things are wrong, but you're not going to speak up against them. I'm not getting involved in that. You know,
Yes, indifference.
exactly. You see people getting basically demonized for being conservative. You're not going to say anything about that. You have no responsibilities for that. You know what I mean? They're passing
Mhm.
policies in school, education, where they're literally telling white students they have to deconstruct their whiteness. You're not going to take any
Right.
responsibility for that. That's the whole point of that fundamental of self-accountability. Your society, the country you live in, the benefits you receive from that comes with accountability. Your free parenting comes with accountability. And if you teach your children that right, you don't have to worry about them making a lot of these bad decisions, because they know that if they do make a bad decision, they're accountable for it.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yes. And that's a perfect segue into my latter part of this conversation is personal accountability. Um, and again, these are fundamental things that we don't talk about enough. We don't share enough between our friends. We don't share enough between our parent friends, that or even getting to know, which is another thing we kind of didn't go over. But with friendship and courtship, right, comes sex education. Not being afraid to have those conversations with your kids at the appropriate time and appropriate age, because they're going to start moving into this area. My daughter's 11, and she's going into that, the pubescent age, the pubescent stage of her life. And I was like, okay, when she's this age, I'm going to start bringing it up. When she's this age, we're, at this point, we're going to start preparing for it, so that she knows when we get, when she gets there and it happens, that she's not unaware of it. Like, she's not taken by surprise. Haven't had the sex talk yet. She's not there yet. She's nowhere near there yet, but we will have that when it's time. He takes care. He has a talk with the boys. I have the talk with her. And then being on the same page as parents, being on the same page, teaching the same things. We may not teach the same way or parent the same way, but we are at least on the same page when it comes to our parenting style and what we expect of our kids. That's another huge thing that I think that a lot of parents have a hard time doing, because they're so used to this, or they're trying to reverse some of the parenting things that happen to them with their kids, and they're overcompensating in some areas, which we've all done it at some point or another, and just don't realize it because of that self-awareness that we're lacking. So when you brought up the self-accountability, that kind of goes into the next point that I want to make, is that when some of these fundamentals that we don't teach right now, right, is to live in the moment. And when I say live in the moment, it means to be present and aware of the things that are around you, what people are talking about, the words that they're using, how they're being around you, like learning how to read someone and to be aware of them, for a number of things, so that you know how you're going to react in such a way, because that's the only thing that we have control over. We don't have control over anyone, anything, or any place around us, except what we think, feel, and believe and see and perceive in the world. We only have control of that. That's it. Not even our kids, because if that were the case, our kids wouldn't have meltdowns in stores. They wouldn't have meltdowns because they didn't get candy today, or they didn't have meltdowns because they don't want to go to bed. They wouldn't have meltdowns or attitudes. You know what I mean? If what you said goes and that's it, and there's no question about it, they wouldn't have feelings about it if you controlled them. And so that's another thing that we have to be aware of. Another thing, pushing, nurture family and friends, nurture your relationships. That's not pushed enough. That's not talked about enough, because it's, again, about the liberalism ideal, right? Is about individuality and only yourself and what you want and how you feel at the moment, instead of nurturing the friendships and relationships that you have now, which are going to be the things that get you through the hardest times of your life. And if you alienate those people, you're going to be alone, and it's going to be worse. It's going to be harder. We touched on it before, staying fit and healthy. Obviously, again, those four pillars. our social relationships, our physical health, and mental health. And not because we want to be the best fit, looking beautiful, whatever, but one, it boosts your confidence, because there is a chemical reaction that happens within your body when you do these things for yourself. It helps your body function properly on all the levels it's supposed to. It releases serotonin. It releases positive endorphins when you actually do that. But also it helps you live longer for the life that you want to live. Do what you enjoy most of the time. Have basically what you have passion for, and be there for others. Always keep developing. This all comes with self-awareness, and we don't teach enough of self-awareness. Self-awareness is your ability to correctly perceive your own emotions as they are occurring. Self-approval, self-worth, self-sufficient, self-respect, self-acceptance, self-love. And this is different than the individual, than celebrating the individual ideology. Two completely different things. One is being self-aware of who you are, how you feel with what's going on around you, so that you can react in a specific way versus reacting in a chaotic way, if that makes sense. Being able to process the situation, being able to process other people's emotions, and being able to understand them, so you can either learn from them or throw away what's not for you. A lot of times we're just open books, and we receive every single thing that is going on around us, and we're worse off for it. So without personal accountability, that's a huge thing that we're missing nowadays. It's a fundamental thing to be aware of who you are, not what you do, not what you offer, because what you offer is different than what you're worth, if that makes sense. And we don't talk enough about self-love. And one of the things I mentioned earlier was to love your neighbor as yourself. You cannot love properly if you don't love yourself efficiently. Does that make sense? So in terms of self-awareness and self-accountability, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you? Number one, and that's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a little bit tangent here, but that's another thing. Our kids don't know what that is because their parents don't know what that is. Parents don't love themselves enough because of whatever happened to them in their life. They didn't have a chance to process it. They didn't have a chance to talk about it. They didn't have a chance to heal from it and learn what they were supposed to. So how in the heck are they going to teach their kids? We need to talk about these things more. So on a scale of 1 to 10, personal accountability and self-awareness, how important is it to you as a person, and how important is it to you to teach your children that? Joshua, you're unmuted. Go for it.
If there was a rating of 100, I would be hitting it right now. So it's a 10 for me. It's a 10 for me.
It's a 10 for me.
All right, let's dive into it. We have about 10 minutes. Let's dive into this because I know it's a big, chunky, meaty one. Let's dive into this, and comments start blowing up. Think about this and really start blowing this in there as we bring this to an end. Go ahead, Shelly. You go first. Why?
Because again, I think it's part of the foundation of who they are and what they believe in. It's part of like standards and morals. I think it's being accountable, like holding yourself accountable helps you grow. Knowing that you're not above learning means that you are open to growing. I think that it's a great way to make them, accountability is a great way to make a person or your children better at everything they do, because they're going to understand what it's holding themselves to it, not having that mentality where they're entitled. Like the one thing that I do not want my children to ever feel is entitled to anything. I don't want them running around not knowing what it's like to feel like, oh, people owe them something, or I just don't want my children to ever feel entitled. So I think for me, those things are so important to instill in your children, just so that they can grow up to be good husbands, and wives and employees, or maybe they own their own businesses. But and then I think that when we're like that, we kind of, they can pass that on to other people too. You know how people like, we're all in this together because we all believe similar things. So therefore, we surround ourselves with people who want to learn and people who want to. So I think that kind of passes down to your children too. So I think, like I said, for me, it's part of the foundation of them growing up and growing into healthy, hardworking adults.
Agreed. Joshua?
So self accountability for me is it's major. I'll give everybody a quick story about me for people that don't know. So I grew up very, very poor. My upbringing was nothing like you would imagine. My father died when I was about 3. My mom fell apart. She couldn't handle it. I ended up in a foster home for a little bit, got adopted by my nana. And, all my life I was constantly told that it was acceptable for me to have just erratic behavior because I had a bad upbringing. I could constantly project my behavior on the cards I was dealt in life, and I had no accountability. And I was not taught accountability by my parents. Parents can't teach accountability, but that's not where I learned it. So when I was about 20 years old, I made a very bad decision, and I went to prison for it for a long time. And I repeated that behavior, and I kept getting into trouble. And I was constantly taught to just blame everything else for my behavior. And then it was kind of like it just dawned on me. I was just sitting in the cell one day and I was like, this is nobody else's fault but mine. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't start realizing that everything I choose to do, every action, everything that I control within my power, that's my responsibility. If I don't take accountability for that, I'm going to keep doing this. And that is when I learned how important self-accountability was. That there is things in your life that you can control, and there is things that you do that affect not only yourself, but they affect others. And people have to start realizing these things, because when you don't realize that and you don't have any self-accountability, you're going to repeat bad decisions. You're going to keep repeating certain mistakes because you're not learning the lesson from it, because you're not taking any accountability. And that's a major, major, major problem right now with society as a whole. There are things that we are responsible for and that we have to accept that we are responsible for. And it spans to many things. It could span from life choices. It could span to maintaining friendships, your health, your mental state, and the state in which your society functions as a whole. Because we all have some responsibilities for that. And when things don't go right, we all have to take some accountability for that as well. So accountability for me is major. It's major. And I had to learn it the worst way imaginable. I had to learn it in prison. It took that much mistake and that much constant just making the worst decisions imaginable for me to finally learn that.
Mm-hmm.
I was blaming everything. I was blaming my life. I blamed God, blaming God. Why'd you take my dad? Blamed everything except blame myself. And I kept repeating, perpetuating that behavior. And then once I dawned on that, my life has never been the same. I got a good job. I'm happy. I'm learning things. I'm reading. I'm doing things I never thought I could do. And it all started with accountability. So I think accountability is major. It's major.
Yes. And I agree. Like, my friend's watching me. Squirrel. So that's huge, because again, personal accountability also comes with self-awareness, and that's something that we don't have. Again, like the fundamentals of what we used to be taught: courting, actually getting to know someone, building a relationship with someone, having friendships, and not having acquaintances, or especially in high school, and it leads into your early adult years, and no, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. I did my shit when I was young, so I get it. It all comes down to being able to learn from your mistakes, to learn from your past, to look back in your past and to self-reflect and understand why we are the way we are, and how do we improve? How do we let go of the baggage? How do we let go of what's holding us back, what we're struggling with us? How do we let that go and then turn and move, look forward, not behind, but look forward and make progress that way, building on the skills that we now have, improving on them, being better people, being better listeners, being better friends. And how do you learn that? You learn that by, oh shit, I fucked up. I was a bad friend that one time. I don't want to do that again. I don't want them to feel like that. I don't want them to feel like they don't mean anything. So I have to make different choices moving forward in the type of friend that I want to be, the type of spouse I want to be, the type of, girlfriend, the type of brother or sister, the type of employee I want to be. That's all that's all personal responsibility. It's all self-awareness. We cannot have a society that has personal responsibility if we, as parents who are building the next generation of this society, if we don't learn that ourselves first. And if we're not talking about it, if we're not sharing our own ideas and our own perspectives and building on it to make a better world forward, a better kids for the world that we're in, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. We have to continue to talk about self-love and self-worth and where it comes from. It doesn't come from the outside world. These are basic fundamentals that we used to talk about. Don't judge a book by its cover. Walk in love. Get to know that person. Don't just automatically assume they're a certain type of way. Invest in someone that you think is worth spending years with. Invest in that relationship. Don't just jump into it thinking, I want temporary satisfaction right now. Because temporary satisfaction is exactly that. It's temporary and it goes away. And then you don't learn who these people are. And then you get stuck with these people for almost the rest of your life. And what kind of quality of life is that in the end? What do you guys think about that?
I agree with that. I definitely agree with the temporary solution thing, and you could kind of tie that into parenting because I'll give you a hypothetical. Parents often they'll go with the temporary solution of not actually telling their kids the truthful thing to not hurt feelings, and that's a temporary solution, but it's not good for the long run. So people can't have the outlook of constantly relying on a temporary solution with long-term goals. It's
Right.
not feasible. It's not feasible. You can't take shortcuts to benefit for a long-term solution. It's just not. It's not feasible. It does not work. It's not logical. It doesn't work
Right.
This doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? You gotta address things how they're supposed to be addressed, and you can't take no shortcuts. You can't do it. So I agree with that 100%, 110%.
Kelly, you look like you have something to say.
No, I was just saying that I agree with everything that you said, and I agree with everything that that Josh said.
So as we wrap this up, how do we move forward? How do we make little changes? Like, what can we do as parents? What can we do as friends? What can we do for, our children's friends' parents? Do you guys know them? Because you know what I noticed with my kids being in elementary, I realized like how hard it was to actually meet the parents of their friends in the way that, I don't know, the way that the school is set up. It's so quick, drop off, pick up, go, 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 especially if their parents are working or whatever. And the only time that you ever maybe have a chance to get to know anybody is if they invite you to a birthday party, especially when they're younger. And I think that also has a lot to do with we as adults, right, have preconceived notions like, do I want to go meet them? But I think it's so important to, one, not only know your kids' friends, but also know their parents and being able to establish that relationship, period. I honestly have no idea if my parents knew any of my friends' parents. I honestly don't think that they did. But I know my kids' friends' parents, at least as many as I can. I feel like that's something that we've walked away from as well.
Yes, it has. If I could just say, I'll say. So one thing that has actually happened with me is in my state, I'm working with a lot of local politicians on a state level, as well as certain committees, to stop the advancement of critical race theory. Now, my state is trying to implement it statewide. And I went to, and I'm actually glad that I attended, because I went to there's like a parent teacher committee thing, and other parents ended up going that never previously had gone, and they were baffled. They were in awe. Like they were almost pale, like ghostly white, because they did not believe that this was actually happening. They didn't know. And I think that it was a wake up call to parents
Yeah.
that they need to stop paying attention to some of these things,
Mhm.
because I think it kind of set into them like, holy shit, how did I not see this? How did I not see this on my child's work? Because
Right.
when they actually seen some of this stuff on the curriculum, it's bad. It's literally telling like 10-year-old students to deconstruct whiteness, to rebel, to be activists. This is in a public taxpayer curriculum, and they
Right.
had no idea. So that just goes to show the involvement of parents with education and what's actually going on and what is being groomed to your children. And it was a
Right.
major wake-up call, because after that happened, I was having discussions with a parent, and they were kind of bashing themselves. And
Yeah.
we were talking, and she was like, I can't believe that I didn't know anything. Like, I feel like, what was I doing? Like, I can't believe it.
Mhm.
And as bad as I felt for her, I was also happy, because I realized that was her wake-up call, as well
Right.
as all the other parents that attended. So that would be my main suggestion: to keep engaging with other people, even if they're from out of state. Keep the dialogue going, and take a look at your local committees. Go on your state and look up the legislation. You'll be surprised at some of these things that are being pushed, and it's not like it's secretive neither. And it's not a lot of people that are actually controlling it. It's not. It's a small amount of people that are just in positions where they can do it.
Right.
But my state is actually pushing back, and parents are starting to be aware, and it was good. It was it was healthy. I enjoyed it, and I was glad I did it. And I think it built a relationship between me and other parents that I didn't even know from growing up, and we got really close, and it was good, man. So that's one thing I would strongly suggest, for sure.
I love it. Chelly,
Yeah,
you can good on it tonight. Unmuting yourself.
I have been. So no, I think that it's been. I think that you definitely have to get involved. Definitely look into what's happening in your children's schools. Pay attention to what's happening in your children's homework. Like, start listening in. I know that people have busy lives, and I know parents are working, and it's hustle and bustle. I get it, but sit down. Even if you dedicate 5 minutes to sitting and talking with your child, like, hey, what did you learn today? Like, what are you guys talking about? Is there anything that you think that I would want to know happening in school? And if you already have that open communication with your kids, they're just gonna that's all gonna roll out of their mouth. So yeah, definitely get involved. And is this final statements?
Yeah, this is kind of where we're at.
So for me, yeah, my final thoughts are: love your children, be there for your children, be a parent first and foremost to your children, because they need you, especially in the crazy times that we're living in. And my message to parents: rise up. Your kids need you.
Awesome. All right. And mine, I would just say, since it's our parents, since it's us who have to teach our kids, if you don't already have these things, if you already have a problem with your self-awareness, or you have an issue with connecting to yourself in such a way to get that healing that you need, or to release the anxiety or the worries or the concerns or the hurts and the pains and the hangups that you've had in your life, I strongly, strongly, strongly suggest that you take that time to reflect within yourself, to learn self-awareness, to learn how to correctly perceive your own emotions as they are occurring, because as you are dealing with those, you also react in such a way to your kids based on how you're feeling. Self-approval, self-worth, self-efficiency, self-respect, and self-acceptance, and self-love. Love yourself, accept yourself, learn and know that you are worthy enough to be better. You are worthy enough for change. You are worthy enough for progress. You are worthy enough of healing. You are worthy enough of love. You are and can be a great parent, and you are and can be raising a wonderful, wonderful human being. You have that in you. You are capable of those things. So my shout out is to all the parents, because you have to teach them, and you can't teach them unless you know yourself. We are the examples. So be the example. Walk in love, love and light. I hope this brought value to your lives. Thank you for spending some of your Saturday evening with us. We appreciate every single one of you. Don't forget to like, follow, share, and subscribe to the page. We will see you next time. Thanks, guys.
Peace.